Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the policy series. And this is Jamaica Diaspora Northeast Policy Series. And I say policy series because we are featuring certain policies that are they're serious consideration for our children as well as our school system and our society in general. So my name is Dr. Dwayne Dice. I'm the policy chair in the Jamaica Diaspora Northeast, USA, and welcome. And I have with us two guests, and I'm going to introduce them in a little while. But I want to say that Dr. Karen Dunkley was supposed to be here this afternoon, and she's not because she is having a conflict with some other events and this one. So we're gonna be here with you for another 40 minutes or so, and we're gonna work through some of the policy issues that relates to the safety of our children. Last time we looked at policy in general, educational policy, and how the education policies are formed and what inform those policies. So today, now we're looking at safety policies of our children to make sure that they are making the right choices, but the leaders are also making the right choices as well. So let's get into our program. So we have with us here Mr. Eric Reynolds, and he's retired in New York City detective. And we also have with us Miss Anne-Marie Bishop, and she's a lawyer, she's a barrister. She's also a mediator, and she does a lot of work with the officers in Jamaica, police officers, that area to give back to community. She also works with the schools, and she does a lot of work. And I'm so happy for her to be here this evening too, because today she had her annual health fair, and she finished with that in a short while ago, and she's joining us to share with us. So we're gonna get into some of these issues that are plaguing us, as well as what we can do so that they stop plaguing us in our society and our children. All right, I'm gonna ask Miss Anne-Marie Bishop, since you're the lady among us, Eric wouldn't mind at all. Just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you before we get into it. And then I'll ask Mr. Reynolds to introduce himself as well.
Thank you, Dr. Dwayne. Thank you for having me on your program. I have the highest respect for you. I'm honored to be here. So I'm Anne-Marie Bishop. I've been practicing as an attorney for 24 years come July this year. I'm a barrister of England and Wales and an attorney in Jamaica for 22 years. I'm a certified gazetted parish court mediator. I'm an HR consultant. I do a lot of work in the community. I'm with the Kiwanis Club of the Garden Parish, which is in St. Ann. I'm also the president and founder of the Bishop Law Foundation. I'm involved in education as the secretary for Region 6 of the National Parents Teachers Association of Jamaica, being the immediate vice president of the Cedar Grove Academy. I'm involved with Cumberland Senior Citizens. I do a lot of charitable engagements. And as you said earlier, today we had the Bishop Law, the law offices of Bishop Law and the Kiwanis division, clubs within Division 24, health and wellness fair for women and children, focusing on issues affecting women and children. So we had dental, optical services, free legal consultation. We had partnered with the Caribbean Graduate School of Theology, and they offered counseling advice to the participants. We had Northeast Regional Health Authority on board, and they also assisted with some of the healthcare solutions. Broadbent, Dr. Vincent Riley team offered their services in terms of ECG, which is the Heart Place and Wellness Center. We had a number of stakeholders here. We had the Child Protection and Family Services here, the
Wow.
Jamaica Constabulary Force. Of course, as part of wealth, you know, so you need cash to care. So we had courts ready cash here and some other private entities. And we did talks on mediation and conflict management and offer just general advice to the public and health solutions. We're hoping to do another health fair later this year because the focus is really on empowering our women and children, being proactive in terms of our health. And my son, Leopold Wigan, who is a black belt in karate, a senpai, first degree black belt, he provided us with some karate tips and self-defense techniques that he demonstrated to the audience.
Wow.
So we had a full day and but I'm still happy to be here and I hope I can contribute to this discussion.
Of course, because you're excellent in your field and so many hats.
Thank you.
Eric, I don't know if you can beat that at all.
I was just...
The woman is loaded.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna try.
Yes.
Don't let it look like that, Eric.
So yes, Ms. Bishop is very accomplished. My resume is pales in comparison, but I was a New York City detective for 11 years. I did 20 years with the police department in New York City. 11 was as a detective in the bureau. I went to school at night, got a degree in forensic psychology, and did that to help me better understand the population I was dealing with. You know, they found out the hows, and I knew the how they were doing things. It's the why that used to make me, that used to get me. That was the thing I was always come away with, why. So thanks for having me. I appreciate you bringing me on.
You're very reflective, very reflective. That's good. Yes. All right, so let's get into it because it's policy and we're talking about child safety, children's safety policies. What are the components of this this policy that involve our children? Where is it? Where does it start when we're looking at children and the policies that are involved in their safety? Yeah, go ahead.
In the U.S.?
Anywhere, anywhere, in general.
Okay, because in New York, it pretty much starts with ACS, the Administration for Children's Services. There's also, well, there's a number of agencies that, you know, provide services depending on what's going on with children. There's a lot of community-based organizations. A lot like what Ms. Bishop had mentioned, where they, you know, provide grassroots level assistance, you know, to parents for their children.
What do you think, Ms. Bishop?
Well, in Jamaica, we have the Child Protection and Family Services Unit. We have the Jamaica Constabulary Force, of course. We have the Office of the Children Advocate, and we have our legislation that focuses on offenses against children. And for example, we have the Child Care and Protection Act that makes everybody a prescribed person. The pastor, the guidance counselor, the teachers, the medical doctor, we're all prescribed persons. So if we're aware or we suspect that a child is being abused, sexually, verbally, any kind of abuse, we have a duty under the act to report it. If we fail to report it, it's a criminal offense, and the fine is as high as 500,000 Jamaican dollars or 6 months imprisonment, I believe. So there are a number of agencies and there are a number of legislation that affect the care and protection of our children.
Okay, all right, so that's where it starts with all the big people and the organization, putting pen to paper and making sure that they're penning these words and they mean something, and people should hold them in high regard for our children.
Yes, definitely, so, because there are consequences.
There are consequences. Is it being followed up? Are people being charged when they abuse children in general? Is there a, maybe my question should be, is it implemented then?
All
To the
right.
full length of the law?
In Jamaica, I know there's still room for improvement and we can do more to protect our children. Notwithstanding that some of the abuses are not being reported. And if you don't bring it to the attention of the police and the relevant authorities, and they're not aware, then they cannot enforce the law. So there's a need for us as members of the public to take a community approach in raising a child and appreciating that we're all accountable for the welfare of our children. So if you're aware that there's abuse going on and you fail to report it, you would be breaching the Child Care and Protection Act, but also you would not be doing our future generation any justice. So we need to bring that to the forefront, to the attention of the relevant authorities so that the necessary action can be taken. The legislation is in place and persons have been charged and persons have been convicted. But
Okay.
more needs to be done.
Yeah.
More needs to be done. And one of the ways to ensure the safety of our children is not just the laws, but through education and empowerment of our parents and teaching them good parenting skills and helping them to have a sense of appreciation that we need to be more accountable and act in the best interest of our children.
True, yeah.
Now in New York, we have a similar system with a mandated reporter where you have to make those reports, you know, of any type of abuse, whether it's physical, verbal, whether if it's educational neglect. If you know that a parent is not sending their child to school, that has to be reported also. The law, like Ms. Bishop said, the laws are in place. There's, you know, there's more than enough laws. The problem is in enforcing it at times is hard because you have a population that isn't necessarily, you can't necessarily get information from them right away. You know, some children don't understand what's happening to them. They can't really verbalize what's happening. Some families are very secretive. You know, they feel it's a family thing, and outsiders, it would bring shame to their family. You know, we have to keep it amongst ourselves. We'll, you know, deal with it on our own. That, of course, is unfortunate because there's lots of services that's available to children who are, you know, being abused in one way or another. As a detective, they were giving us ACS cases, and I was really surprised when I had gotten a couple of them, and they're very, very difficult to investigate when someone makes an allegation, because now you're knocking on someone's door and you're intruding. Basically, you're saying, okay, there's an accusation that you're neglecting or abusing your child in some way. And, you know, a lot of people become very hostile and you know, refuse to cooperate with you. So it takes a lot of patience and perseverance as an investigator to, you know, to sort of penetrate that wall that they put up when it, you know, when these accusations are made.
You know, you brought up a very, go on.
I agree with what Mr. Reynolds said. And we have that issue here. I'm sure the JSF agree that they have that issue in terms of the reporting and gathering the evidence to prosecute or to have a strong case. Even though I'm a defense attorney, a lot of the cases that are brought before the court, they fall apart because there's no evidence to convict a person beyond a reasonable doubt. And when you're dealing with criminal matter, and I'm sure it's the same in your jurisdiction, Mr. Reynolds, that it is criminal matters you have to convict on beyond a reasonable doubt, not on a balance of probability. And therefore the evidence must be overwhelming for a judge or a jury to find a person guilty of a serious offense, such as having sex with a child under 16 or any sexual offenses involve a child. And within Mr. Reynolds identify the issue of culture, the secrecy within certain families. And it's a matter of culture and their socialization and the value that they put on women and children. And we have that subculture here as well in Jamaica, because within certain organizations, including the churches and even within the family setting, persons rather sweep it under the carpet, and I'm sure you understand that term, than bring it out in public, fear of reprisal or embarrassment, and wanting to protect the family circle. So we have that issue as well.
They really need to stop. How do we stop that culture though? How do we change it?
Education, 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 empowerment, and you know, encouraging our children, raising their level of self-confidence, self-consciousness about themselves, and letting them have high self-worth. And I know that within our schools now, we teach a subject that they, I don't remember the exact term, but the children learn about good touch and bad touch and what is appropriate touching. So the sex education, if you want to call it. Our children are more aware as to what is acceptable. The challenge though is, you know, getting the matter before the court and securing the evidence within a reasonable time after the allegation of the offense, because it is an allegation. And Detective Reynolds will tell you that it's an allegation, it's a complaint, and there has to be an investigation, a file put together, and then submitted to the court, and then we take the defense take it from there, the prosecutor take it from there.
So Mr. Reynolds, from your perspective as a detective, what else could we add to the change process? Because this is a culture that we need to change.
Well, I personally feel there's not enough resources, government resources for that sort of thing. ACS workers are they're overworked. They have, you know, each one has a tremendous caseload. Every time there's a child dies of some kind of abuse, you'll always hear that the worker, you know, may have not gone to the apartment and said they went to the apartment. And that's because they just have so many cases that it's, you know, it's really difficult for one person to manage all of those, you know. And there's just so many times where you go to the apartment, nobody answers. You know, you go to the school to talk to the kid's not in school. You know, parents might have moved. They're evicted from their apartment. Now they're somewhere else. You got to figure where are they now? There's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of challenges.
So now, speaking of the safety for our children, we notice that in America here, there are, what do you call them? Those officers that you place in the school, the safety officers?
Yes.
That they put in schools. Do you think that's a good move in terms of the safety of our children? Because even if you look at the mass shootings that are happening, there wasn't a safety officer in the most recent one, but they're still existing. The idea of safety officers are existing in schools. So do you think those are important aspects as it relates to safety of our children, or should they do more? What are the other aspects of it that they need to include?
I don't know that there's enough research on the subject matter to say one way or another, because, you know, these school shootings, while they're high profile, they're very rare in regard to, you know, the number of schools there are nationally. I mean, I shouldn't say rare. That's a poor choice of words, because any amount is too much. I would personally say that having a police officer who wants to be there, you know, who's trained and, you know, understands the population that he's dealing with, and he's working hand in hand with the teachers and, you know, guidance counselors and, you know, whatever other people that they have providing services,
Mhm.
you know, would be a good thing. Someone who has a background in social work, or, you know, is your ideal candidate. I don't know what percentage of the police department has that kind of background, but, you know, that would be optimal.
Mhm. All right. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Ms. Bishop,
Yes,
what
Dr.
do they do? Yeah, what do they do in Jamaica? Because do they have resource
We
officer?
have we
Resource, that's
have
it. Resource officer.
we have officers assigned to the schools across the island, and it's
Do they have a
usually
name?
I'm not sure of the name,
Okay.
but they're officers assigned,
Mhm.
and they're usually from the closest police station to the school or the community safety and security branch.
Mhm.
And for those schools that they're more volatile,
Mhm.
they try to maintain a very good relationship with the school and the students, so that if there's an incident,
Mhm.
they're willing to go across as quickly as possible, go by the school as quickly as possible. I believe locally we do maintain a very strong relationship between the Jamaica Constabulary Force and our schools.
Mhm.
And they're usually present at career days. They're willing to set up police youth clubs within the community and be involved in the school activities.
Oh, okay.
And that's one way to positively impact and motivate the children.
Mhm. You know, one of our listeners now said that in terms of policy, we need to involve everybody. We need to, it's a collaboration between parents, teachers, children, and other organizations
I
in the
absolutely
community.
agree. I
Yeah.
absolutely agree. You cannot approach the issue of domestic violence and abuse against children from a sole perspective. It has to be a holistic approach.
Right.
You have to involve all entities. So the school must be involved. It's a partnership between parents, school, the guidance counselors. It's a partnership between the school, the parents, and the community. It's a partnership between the churches, regardless of denomination. So the churches as a whole, the school, the environment, the community. So it's a holistic approach. If you try to do it with just a few stakeholders, that's where we're failing. We need to approach it more strategically and from a holistic perspective. Have that discussion with the police by themselves cannot do it. The school by itself cannot do it. The guidance counselors cannot do it. So it takes a more holistic approach to get it done, and we need to be more proactive. We can do more, and I agree with Mr. Reynolds. The resources is not sufficient. It's lacking, and hence we also need the private sector involvement.
Yeah.
You know, to address some of these issues.
Yeah. So
And
yeah, very good. Yes. Go ahead.
It should matter, but
yeah.
it should matter. You're right, Ms. Bishop. The private sector should be involved, because this directly affects them also, because
Yes,
their workforce comes from, you know,
the
these
community.
children.
Yes, exactly.
These are their future workers. They
Yes.
want people who are capable of taking orders, of following instructions, of being able to get there on time, of having a, you know, a demeanor that's, you know, it just helps their, you know, their ability to interact with customers and other employees is vital. And you see a lot of people like that, you know, who are, you know, you go into a store and people are angry and they, you know, kind of dismissive of you at times, not always. And I always think to myself, you know, I wonder what happened to this person that they're, you know, that they act in this manner. It's just, you know, didn't happen yesterday, obviously. But yeah, the private sector does and should invest a little more.
Yeah.
So not to cut you, Dr. Dyke, the reality is that when private sector is involved in the inner city communities, in which some of them have their factories and offices, and they can do sessions on empowerment and educate and help in a practical way, whether it's through scholarships, or other means provide employment, it reduces the crime rate within that area. And it also reduces the potential of break-ins into their own business as well. So it can be a win-win partnership. When they're involved in the community that they set up their business in, especially in a city community where the work is low and you can provide gainful employment and alternatives to crime, you will get a better response in the long run when you invest in the community.
Yeah, that is very true. And that's common sense. That is very common sense.
Can I relate a story?
Yeah, please.
I saw, I had, when I was in the robbery squad, when I first got into the detective bureau, one of the tools we had were books of, with mugshots in it. And we had pictures of everybody in the precinct who had been arrested for robbery, because 6 to 7% of the population accounts for 95% of the crimes in that area. It's not as though everybody equally are committing crimes in an area. It's a small group that are doing it. So I remember once this guy had been robbed on the street, and he had come to the precinct. He came to our office to look at mug books and mug shots, and he was brought his son. His son looked to be about 9 or 10 years old, and he had been arrested himself and been in jail, and was pointing out these guys and like glamorizing them to him. Oh, this guy was crazy. He stabs someone, he beat up the CO. And just talking about these guys as though they were heroes. And I thought, this kid's perspective is, is going to be, he's going to see the bad guy as the good guy. His perspective of what's right is going to be wrong because of his, his father's, what his father identifies with. And what his father looks up to and idolizes. And it's, the kids unfortunately doesn't have much of a chance.
Wow.
But that's not,
Mr. Reynolds, that is the culture and that is the cycle we're trying to break.
Right.
By showing to our children that there's an alternative to crime and violence.
Right.
And that comes through education and training. Like locally, we have the Heart NSTA, which do a lot of training. Most courses are, there's no cost, or the cost is so minimal, under $20,000. And you try to change the mindset or change their way of thinking and how they approach. That requires investment, and you cannot leave that to government alone. That requires private sector investment, and for the private sector to be on board in a real way. Not just the thought, but a real way that shows that they're willing to invest in our young persons and show them an alternative. It's like you're not trying to dress a cut after it breaks out, but you see ahead and realize that there's this danger ahead. And you, Mr. Reynolds, you have been a detective for several years, so you preempt the possibility of a crime, and you're trying to address the issue through education and other means prior to that crime taking place.
Yeah, ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
I've never heard that saying, but I'm going to adopt it.
Actually, I have another story, which is actually the opposite, the reverse of the one I just told you. The very last homicide I had before I retired was a 16-year-old girl was strangled by a couple of gang members, and her body was dumped on the roof of their building. Anyway, we quickly found out who it was, and we locked him up. And I was talking to his father, and his father had told me that he had, during his 70s, he was with the Black Panthers, and he had done time for bank robbery and the other things. And he said, and it just, I really felt, it really got to me when he was saying this, but he just said very softly, "This is not what I wanted for my kid," you know, and you could see the pain that this man was feeling, you know, that his son was in this predicament. The last thing in the world he wanted for him, you know, to commit crime, to be incarcerated, to, you know, to go up against the criminal justice system like this was just, at times it's heart-wrenching. You just, you know, you look at people and you just wish things could have been different for them.
Yeah, that's true. It's hard, and sometimes you cringe and you administer the procedure, the legal procedures, but you're wondering if there's another way out, you know, to help somebody. It's hard. Have you ever gone through, before we ask Miss Bishop, Mr. Reynolds, have you involved, you see, when you were in the police force, have you seen any like widespread conversations to involve all different entities when they're looking at policy? Or they just sit at a table and they say, this is what we think the public should do? Did they ever involve a lot of people?
I've never been involved in policy. That's something that would have been, you know, discussed in one police plaza with the big bosses. I'm sure they consult with sociologists and other people, and, you know, that sort of thing. But for us, we just get our marching orders, and, you know, at the time I was on the job, there was just so much crime. Trying to do that was hard. Now, actually, you know, I used to talk to guys when I would arrest them, you know, because you're going to spend, you know, like 8-10 hours processing the arrest. And a lot of guys, you know, we would talk, and I would say 98% of the guys that I arrested I felt were redeemable, and, you know, were decent people aside from, you know, what they had done. And I would always make it a point of stopping them on the street when I see them after the arrest and asking them, how'd you make out in court? You know, and, you know, look, just try to talk to them and say, listen, you know, things don't have to be this way. You know, and I'm only one voice. I don't know who else they hear it from, you know, but at least they're hearing it from somebody. That's my perspective. At least somebody's telling them that. And I used to have guys come to the precinct, you know, and say, come stop by, you know, sit down, talk. You know, I got no problem with that. Yeah,
that sounds like mentorship that they need. Just like that.
That's true.
Yeah, it's just happened naturally, you know, to mentor them.
My last day.
Yes.
I was going to say my very last day with the NYPD, I'll never forget it. I got in my car and I started to drive away from the precinct, and I stopped at the light at the corner. The absolutely true story. As people were crossing, one person stopped and pointed at me. He goes, Detective Reynolds. Yo, man, I got to go visit you.
Yeah.
It was a guy I had arrested for assaulting 2 women. And he had been ducking me. And anyway, I ended up arresting him at his job, which I kept telling him I didn't want to do. I wanted him to just come in. I can arrest you at a point where you're off for the next couple of days and you won't miss work, and you won't, you know, your boss won't know that you were arrested for some crime. Because when it comes to domestic violence, that only exacerbates the situation.
Yeah.
Right? You know the victim is going to go back with the perpetrator. They're going to, if he loses his job, if he's, you know, that has a ripple effect. You know, whatever problems they have is now going to be exacerbated. It's going to become worse. I mean, it doesn't help the relationship. And he said, yeah, I want to, because I told him plenty of times, come upstairs, just stop at the desk, tell them you're coming to see me, and, you know, and they'll let you come up. And I told him, I said, I'm sorry, man, this is my last day. This is my last day ever. as a New York City detective.
Yeah, that's
I
nice.
felt-
It sounds like you were a good mentor for them too. Have you thought about starting something like mentorship for maybe the one ex-convicts, or not even ex-convicts, just some of these students who are in school already and you heard of them, you know, like going astray, leaning towards going astray, and you try pulling them back before they get there?
I had entertained the idea, but I just never pursued it.
Okay.
I guess I should have, but
Yeah, it's not too late. I'm your
It's not
conscience.
exactly what I was about to say, Mr. Reynolds, you still can.
Yeah.
as a black
And,
kid from the as a black kid from the projects, I guess I would be ideal.
Yeah.
A lot of people, for some reason, don't think that. They think I grew up in some white neighborhood, you know,
Exactly.
and family had money and stuff. And it's like, no, it was just my mother and my 3 sisters and in the housing project. And, you know.
Yeah.
But you have a story to tell, and your story will motivate others. And you know, you have been through certain things, and you are a professional who have survived the streets, and you can bring a lot to the table.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you to consider it. But you said something earlier. Mentorship is one of those activities that can really turn the life around in a child or a young teenager or young adult. Mentorship works, and we find that when it comes to domestic violence or interpartner violence, the children who are in those households, chaotic homes create chaotic children, and the cycle continues, and those children are more likely to engage in criminal activities as they get older. Even while they're young, they engage in that activity. So for my organization, and one of the things I'm passionate about is empowering male or female, women and children, educating, so we can break that cycle, so we can, you know, we can be positive role models to them and help them to make different choices, really.
Yeah.
I've been the victim of crime. So I've lost 2 brothers who were murdered locally at a young age. So when it comes to, thank you, Mr. Reynolds, when it comes to crime and violence and inner city, I know what that is. My mom and I went to identify the last brother that we lost in 2009. He was shot about 22 times. So it is, there can be change. And we as the adults, we have to take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and just decide to make that change happen.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you, I'm super sorry to hear that. Very, very sorry. I didn't know, you know, all the conversations, and you never mentioned that. I have to come out in
Something I
public
like
and
to
hear
talk
it.
about. Sorry about it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's not something that comes up in conversation.
Not at all.
Not easily.
Oh God. What's the drawback though because we have limited resources, you know, and if we're looking at the policies that are surrounding this and what should be on the books, and we're saying that there are policies on the book for safety of children, and so they need to be implemented. They need to be in action and to get mobile on a lot of these things. What is stopping it from reaching the grassroots? Because I'm thinking that if they're on the books, then there's some barriers for these policies to safeguard our children to get to even the families that are on the ground. What do you think in your mind? Because I know you're thinking and you're working with families and so on, and you have worked with families. In case of Mr. Reynolds, what do you think are some of the barriers that you have seen that is stopping the communication to get to families and get them mobilized to effect change where these policies are involved?
Some people are so used to it that they don't even see it as dysfunction. Hey, I locked up this young lady. I felt really bad about her. about it, but she lived in the projects in the Polo Grounds in Upper Manhattan. And I think there was about 10 people in her household, including her mother and her father. Her mother and father hated each other, and they both had orders of protection against each other. And I think the father had an order of protection against her also because she pulled a knife on him.
Wow.
And yeah, and there was a lot of violence in this family. And you know, it took me a while to catch her because she violated the order of protection against the father.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but she was so steeped in it, she just couldn't see the dysfunction, you know, of how she was living and how her family was. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, the 8 hours I spent with her, you know, we talked.
Mm-hmm.
We talked, and I told her, this isn't the way to live. You know, you deserve better than this, you know, because you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be here with me right now.
Yeah.
You know, you're at your age, you should have your own place. You should, you know, be starting a career, you know, having finished your education.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't have any of that.
Wow.
So
It boils down back to the point of what Miss Bishop said, that we need education, education, education among them. What do you think, Miss Bishop? What are just one or two?
Well, I just 1 and 2 points. Poverty plays a crucial role in the, what should I say now? It affects the implementation and of the policies, because the policies are there, but persons in the inner city or persons who are from poverty-stricken background, their first priority is not about protecting the children. They're even trying to feed their child. That is one. That's just a reality. The lack of financial resources, low self-esteem, and as Mr. Reynolds said, they accept their situation as normal. And therefore, counseling plays a vital role in the whole issue of domestic violence and getting persons to realize that this is not the right way for me to be living. And I need to make a change in my circumstances and to protect my children. So you will have the policies, but unless you address the social ills, you may not get very far with the implementation of the policies. And you have to come to the table with practical solutions. You really need to come to the table with practical solutions so persons can see their way out. They're looking ahead, but they're seeing a dark tunnel. They don't see any light. So with all the policies and all the legislation, you have to address other social issues that they're having.
Yeah. Geez, that it's really, really deep. Joan Edgar, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Joan Edhill. She said that she's contributing and supporting the point that Mr. Reynolds said too, and you, Ms. Bishop, said that the population has become desensitized to the violence. So they just go with the flow. It becomes a norm for them to live in it. Here's one other point that I want you guys to mention before we actually close the show, because I know it's quick and we're getting people sensitized about the policy or the issues. It is the Sex Offender Registry, because I know recently in Jamaica, as well as here in America, they have these National Sex Offender Registry, and people have committed the crime, then they can't, if they move from one state to the next, then they have that record. And it's on there that it hinders them from getting certain types of job, which actually safeguard our children.
Yes.
The same thing could be true about Jamaica, if
Yes,
there's a National Sex Offender Registry in it. So
yes,
yeah, go ahead, Ms. Bishop, and then I'll hear Mr. Reynolds'
We
perspective.
do have the Sex Offenders Registry, and it's managed by the Department of Correctional Services. And at the head of it is the registrar. It was it took effect, or it came on board in 2014. And three or four main legislation are the Sexual Offences Act, the Sexual Offences Registration of Sex Offenders Regulation that took effect in 2012. We also have the Child Care and Protection Act being one of the legislation. And the offender, once he's convicted in the circuit court or the Court of Appeal in Jamaica, because you can appeal a circuit court offense, but it can be affirmed by the Court of Appeal then. They're listed automatically on the Sex Offenders Registry in Jamaica. And a period of 10 years have to be elapsed before they become even eligible to apply to be, let me use the word, delisted then. And there are certain offenses that are, once you commit those offenses and you're found guilty, it's automatic that you will be entered on the Sex Offenders Registry. And those include rape, incest, marital rape, sexual grooming of a child, having sex with a child under 16, to name a few. Wow. So it's that policy is very, I would say it's quite an advancement for us locally in terms of offenses affecting sexual offenses and especially offenses against children. And as I said before, any offense relating to children under the Child Care and Protection Act and certain offenses under the Trafficking in Persons Prevention, Suppression, and Punishment Act. Those are the four main legislation that we find these offenses under, and those persons being found guilty they will automatically be entered in the Sex Offenders Registry based on our laws.
Okay, all right, I'm going to come back to you. Mr. Reynolds,
yes.
Tell us what you know about the National Sex Offender Registry in America, your views on it, or you have some experience of it.
Well, my experience is very limited, but I do know that there are different levels of sex offenders, depending on, what type of crime you've committed. The highest level is, of course, the ones who break into women's apartments and target strangers. That's the most, predatory, the most dangerous sex offender, that there is. It's a very complicated, issue because, on one hand, you have to protect the public. The public has to be safe. Children, women, it's not easy to be a woman, in our society. Men can be, how could I put it? Men can be savages at times when it comes to women, to the idea that they own a woman or that a woman deserves what they get from them. And, those types of people, some of them just can't be helped and have to be removed from society. There's others who have committed sex offenses and, maybe they were 22 and going out with a 15-year-old, and it was a consensual sort of thing. It's not right. I'm not saying it's right, but there is a difference between him and the guy who's, going into climbing on fire escapes and going into strangers' apartments and raping them. I'm not sure how to deal with them because, the problem is you give them a break, but you could be giving them a break at someone else's expense.
You're right.
That's the problem. When if you're wrong, your wrongness comes at someone else's life being shattered, because rape is a crime. Any of these sex offenses against a woman, that it just changes their life forever. It's almost like murder in a way. People who've experienced murder, and Ms. Bishop, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. There was their life before the murder happened, and then there's their life after, and things are never the same. there's a big hole in these people. They're walking around, they're what I call the walking wounded. And it's hard to trust. It's hard to really, live as fully as you could. I really shouldn't speak for them. I mean, if I'm wrong, Ms. Bishop, please feel free to correct me. But the victims' families that, whether it's sex or, sex offenses or homicide, they're just never the same. It's so hard to, to talk to them and to face them, knowing the pain that they've gone through, and that, it's hard to say, I know what you're going through, because I don't.
Yeah.
I really don't. I know it's horrific. But
I think one of the biggest things that we can do, the most heartfelt thing we could do, is to just listen, I think. And a lot of times we want to suggest solutions to these people. But if we just say, hey, I'm here just to listen. You don't have to, I'm not suggesting anything. I want to listen, and I'm here when you need me, anytime you need me. That's
true. And it's trying to create a balance with the offender and your survivors. Balance justice as well.
Right.
Yeah. When you commit certain crime, and if your peers, a jury of your peers, find you guilty, and your sentence based on whatever your antecedents are, you know that with a crime there are consequences, and that's a reality of life. And the Sex Offenders Registry, I think it's more so perhaps lean towards protecting the survivors of the sexual offense. In Jamaica, I'm not sure what happens in New York, but Mr. Reynolds can state it as the age of consent. You have to be over 16, and you're an adult at age 18, but a person under 16 cannot consent to a sexual act. Whether the young man is 18, 19, 17, as long as the child is under 16, it is a sexual offense in Jamaica.
Right. Same here.
It's just that the sentence for a minor who is under 18 is different from the sentence for a 19-year-old or a 20 or a 50-year-old person. But it's still the same offense, but the sentencing is different because a person under 18 is still a minor, and the court is guided by that.
How much, we want to close here. Sadly, on this, we're going to come back to it in subsequent broadcasts and discussions. How much in Jamaica is this public, that it becomes a part of public knowledge? Is it
that we have a sexual offenders registry?
Registry, yeah, and that people are they're knowledgeable, not just a little bit. They don't have to know the exact act or the law. But how much do we hear people talking about it?
I believe most Jamaicans are aware that we have a sexual offenders registry.
Okay.
And once they hear about it, because there are so many education and sessions online, especially since COVID, with a lot of online sessions about protecting children's rights and the rights of women and children and empowerment. We are more aware than we were maybe 5 years ago, and persons are really looking and wanting to see a lot of changes when it comes to domestic violence and violence against women and children. We're not saying that men are not abused. That's not what we're saying. It's just that in Jamaica over the last 2 or 3 years, we have seen a lot of incidents involving domestic violence and interpartner violence and violence against children dying in fire and other ills. And the public is more wanting to see more done and wanting to see how they can assist in protecting our children as well.
True.
Is that the same in New York, Mr. Reynolds, or
Yes.
generally across the states?
Yes. Yeah. It's
there's that need, there's that passion to want to protect our next generation.
We have,
and that in Jamaica we have Vision 2030, and we just we're celebrating 60 years as a country this year, and We have a government and private sector and the churches. We're more involved now. But we can do more than what we're doing still. There's still room for improvement. It's like getting a C, but you know you really can get an A. And that's where our mindset is. That's where we aim to be. And I know the Jamaica Constabulary Force and the other agencies, Victim Support Services, the ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution, we have other entities, Child Protection and Family Services. I know the churches are doing their thing. Private organization and charities such as the Bishop Law Foundation. We have similar objectives. We want to empower and protect our young persons.
Yeah. Oh, that's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of support there when people can tap into them and involve the police. What were you gonna say, Mr. Reynolds?
Oh, I was going to mention, beside the sex offender registry, we also have a domestic violence registry.
Ah, yes, I forgot that one too.
Here in New
Yes.
York. And
Yes.
in fact, if the police get a report of a domestic violence incident, right? You get the radio run of it, you go to the building, you knock on the door and nobody answers. Even if no one answers, right? You still have to make out a domestic violence report for that apartment, so that if something happens in the future, you know, there's a record that, yes, we've been there before.
Yeah.
You know, there was some problem there.
Okay.
And Dr. Dice, just to follow up on what Mr. Reynolds said, the Bureau of Gender Affairs, and you may have heard that the Sexual Harassment Act, their companies are now required to have sexual harassment policies in place. And also they're being encouraged to also have a domestic violence policy in place in the workplace. So there are steps being, you know, taken to do more, not just looking at domestic violence in the household, but in the workplace as well, because it does affect the workplace.
Yeah.
And one of the issues or one of the challenges the JSF has, Jamaica Constabulary Force, for example, let's say Mr. Reynolds report that I am abusing him as his wife. And then we kiss and make up, Mr. Reynolds.
Yes.
And he withdraws the report. The police cannot do anything because I am the complainant. I need to follow through with the application he needs to follow through with the application against me to get the necessary orders, whether it's a protection order, occupation order. And a lot of times persons kiss and make up and the complaint dies a natural death.
Oh my God.
So it's about education and empowering, whether male or female, for them to realize that this is not normal. Mr. Reynolds gave an example of with the way the husband and wife was living and the child and the drama between them and each having a protection order, whatever orders between them. And we have the same issue here. Persons start the complaint, but they don't follow through. You know, if you don't follow through as a complainant, there's nothing much else can be done.
Yeah, I think it's the same in America here.
If there's an order of protection, we have to make an arrest, regardless of what either side says. You've got to collar them. You got to put them through the system and let the courts decide what to do with it.
Right, what to do with it. So once there's a breach of the order, you make an arrest.
Yeah, because they did.
And it's the same here. The police can make an arrest once there's a breach of the court order under the Domestic Violence Act.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna get you guys back again to talk some more about. So even we went into some issues too that are family related. So we need to get a session on family law and protection probably. All right. Thank you so much for coming on, Ms. Bishop, and thank you for the work you're doing. Amazing, amazing job. Do you have the Bishop Foundation? Is it on a website that you can share?
The Bishop Law Foundation, we have not created our website yet. The most I can do, if you will permit, is to give out our contact number.
Oh yeah.
We're celebrating 1 year come July, where it's still a work in progress. You know, we do a lot of We have been involved with education in terms of giving out school supplies to high school students going into grade 7. We're going to do a book drive soon and to get some books to give out, because you have a lot of parents that can't afford it. So that's in the pipeline. We have done care packages, and we do what we can, and we do a lot of educational programs and health talks.
Oh, cool.
So if you will permit me, I can share the contact.
Yeah, please share it. Yeah.
876-323-9997. That's 876-323-9997. Thank you, Dr.
997.
It is, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And that's the Bishop Law Foundation. And
Yes.
are you working on a website? Because people love the digital.
We are working on a website. We got our logo yesterday. It was designed by Akiwanian.
Yeah.
So we're working on website and all this relevant social media platforms that we need to be on. We will be on soon.
Yeah, that's nice. What about you, Mr. Reynolds? You have anything going on?
No.
You're enjoying retirement.
No. Well, I'm working, but yeah, no,
but Mr. Reynolds, by the time we speak again, you're going to say, I have a mentorship program going, and it's called whatever it is. And we can be involved with mentorship even across borders, because we have the online platform.
Yeah.
We don't have to be physical in the same space,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I could tell you this. In the job I have, one of the things I had to do was vet people who had a criminal record. And this one gentleman came, and he had actually done a homicide. So he was precluded by state law from getting this job. Mm-hmm. But I must have sat down with him for about 2 hours, because he was a really, really, really interesting guy. Mm-hmm. He understood what he did and the reasons behind it, and how he was brought up. And I told him, I said, you know what? It's going to be hard from this point. I said, but promise me you won't give up. Mm-hmm. I'll never tell you that, it's easy, you could just get it overnight. Go back to school. You've got something to offer people, but you're gonna have to work hard at it, because you have a lot of hurdles, but you can do it. When I went to John Jay, we had a professor, a sociologist, who was a Chicago gang member, and now he's teaching, now he's a professor. And I told him, I said, you have a voice that you can speak to a lot of people. A lot of people will listen to you, but just don't give up.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so you can spread that message in your next initiative. Yeah, that's good. All right, thank you so much, Mr. Reynolds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Bishop, as usual, thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.
Yes,
we'll talk
thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, and thank you also, to the listeners and viewers. Thank you, and thank you for your comments. Thank you for your participation. I hope this helped to clarify some questions out there. And stay tuned for some policy series talks that we have coming up also, and other initiatives that we have in the group in the Northeast. Okay. All right. Bye, everybody. Take care. And Mr. Reynolds, we'll talk soon. Miss Bishop,
okay.
I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Dr. Dice.
Yeah.
Bye, Mr. Reynolds. Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too, Miss Bishop. Great. Good luck with your foundation.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.